Hello and welcome to a very different video on my channel. After the new Bethesda showcase of Starfield, I went through the entire 15-minute video frame by frame, and in this video I'm going to show you every detail and Easter egg I could find, and what it will mean for the game. But before we start, if you are, like me, excited for Starfield and want to see content on this channel surrounding it, then be sure to subscribe and thumbs up this video to let YouTube know you enjoy it. But there's a whole lot to get to, so let's not delay any further. Right at the start of the showcase, we open with a star flickering background with the quote, "The wonder is, not that the field of stars is so vast, but that man has measured it," which is a direct quote from page 16 of the Garden of Epicurus by the French poet Anatole France, who won the Nobel Peace Prize in Literature in 1921. The full quote reading, "When we say the universe is vast, we speak purely from a human standpoint. If it were suddenly reduced to the dimensions of a hazelnut, all things keeping their relative proportions, we should know nothing of the change. The pole star, included together with ourselves in the nut, would still take 50 years to transmit its light to us as before. And the earth, though grown smaller than an atom, would be watered with tears and blood just as copiously as it is today. The wonder is, not that the field of stars is so vast, but that man has measured it." Next, after some processing, we open onto our first look at a constellation, quickly highlighting 8 stars, or solar systems perhaps, as the voice on the radio says, "Coordinates input, plotting jump course," before zooming into the 8th to show what seems to be 20 different planets. The route changes from between 2 planets, which seem to possibly be too far apart, as indicated by the break in the line, to now include a 3rd, extra planet, which its gravity is possibly being used to slingshot around in order to make the full distance to the original destination, or maybe this is just a pit stop along the way. The voice seemingly says, "Divergence converged, we're looking good, allocating auxiliary reactor to power, our checks are green across the board, ground jumping commencing in," and then proceeds to count down from 5 as we get our first quick glance at various gameplay segments. The first showing what seems to be a sort of cargo outpost, with a third-person look at our player wearing one of the spacesuits and, as shown off later, jetpacks or boosters. The second showing what actually somewhat seems to be a different area in the same location, or at least a similar one, with now a group of characters running desperately towards their spaceship, this time showing a more compact, modern style of jetpack. This shot then continues with a side shot of the rest of the team running for their lives before cutting to a cinematic we see more clearly later on in this showcase of what seems to be our player finding our first of the mysterious artifacts, which sounds like it'll be our main or initial goal of the main quest. Next is cut to a shot looking down into the constellation headquarters, which we'll see more of later, and then a series of shots in different locations and planets which we'll also see more clearly later on. However, there is one very quick shot in here showing 2 people fighting. The guy on the left unholstering a pistol, which was on the screen for literally less than 3 frames, so maybe has some more significance than the others. All of the shots converge into a fiery explosion, likely a similar effect we will see when we use the hyperjump fast travelling between solar systems. It could also just be the fire on the ship launching, so take that with a pinch of salt. Then we get a lovely chat from our man Todd Howard wearing his signature leather jacket, and with a big smile on his face, because he knows today is the day everyone can finally stop asking him what on earth Starfield is about. He says a few nice things and then introduces us to a mission early on in the game as you arrive on the mysterious moon of Crete, which will probably act as sort of like your Bleak Falls Barrow in Skyrim or Concord in Fallout 4. We open on a wide shot of the moon, showing a mostly brown landscape with some funky looking vegetation, which actually more closely resembles coral, so maybe this moon once had a seabed, or it could just have a very moist atmosphere. In the bottom left, we see a moon base, which we'll get to see closer up in a moment, and as the camera pans forward, we start to see little gas pockets bursting out from the ground, possibly showing us that the air on this moon is toxic or poisonous, and may also just serve as a gameplay hazard to avoid running into. The date reads, Sol date, May 7, 2330. Sol meaning sun, which is often used to refer to the day cycle of planets, as days can be longer or shorter depending on a variety of factors, including how close the planet is to the sun and how fast its rotation is. Next we hear a loud explosion before we see a small speck float down from the sky, likely being the spaceship breaking the sound barrier upon entering the atmosphere. The text then changes to Crete, moon of Ansalon, Ansalon possibly being our starting planet before we get ordered to carry out this mission on one of its moons. As the camera pans round and cuts to an attached shot of the ship, we get a better look at this moon's sky, showing that, yes, it does clearly have an atmosphere, and considering there are clouds, a relatively moist one as mentioned earlier, unlike a moon such as the one orbiting Earth, which has near to no atmosphere and thus has a pitch black sky, as there aren't any gases for the light of the sun to reflect off, which gives the blue effect we see in our sky. The ship lands and we get our first proper look at one of the many customizable ships you can build across your playthrough. This one with a turret on the side and possibly the front, although this looks more like some sort of telescope or scanning device. Then we cut to our very first look at first-person gameplay with some juicy information straight off the bat. We can see for the first time our heads-up display, showing on the left our new modernised compass, no longer using the bar we've seen in both Skyrim and Fallout 4, but now around Astrolabe, which shows the planet we're currently on, in this instance being Crete. Our rotating compass, our O2 and CO2 levels, and most importantly, a digital diagram of the planet, which looks like it displays the time of day, which is a very important thing to note as day cycles are going to work very differently than other Bethesda games we've previously seen, as you could in theory use your ship to keep flying and rotating around the planet as it spins, never making it turn to night, meaning what time of day it is literally only dependent on where you are located on the planet, and both where that planet's sun is located and how fast the planet rotates. On the right side, we get our first look at our health bar, weapon and ammunition, which in my opinion is a huge step up visually from even Fallout 4's, making it look much more modern and up to date. In this instance, showing us wielding the semi-auto EON, or Eon, with 12 bullets to a mag and 10 frag grenades. And here we can also see our first look at our landing sequence, showing that yes, you can walk around on the interior of your ship, and your followers or crew can also sandbox in that area. And speaking of followers, as we step off the ship, we can see and hear our first in-game look at Vasco, a utilitarian companion built by Luna Robotics, a company we'll probably see much more of as we explore the Starfield.
According to the scanners, the abandoned research facility is in this direction.
Next we get our first look at the game's scanning mechanic, which if you notice when activated flips the compass to reveal more specific details on the planet. Crete, specifying it's a moon, shows it currently has a 7-degree temperature, 1% oxygen level, and 0.55 gravity level, which I'm assuming is based off Earth being 1, meaning this moon has almost half the level of gravity as our planet. On the right, the pistol now changed to the cutter, likely the tool we use to mine resources, and in the centre of our screen is the details of this long spindly vegetation ahead of us. It's titled Dust Root, and shows us that by scanning it, we have found 13% of scanned flora on the planet. It could also mean 13% of your total flora in the universe scanned, or maybe something else. In the centre of our crosshair, we can see the scanner also display the distance of the target in question, and we can also see some options below allowing us to scan, set up an outpost, go into photo mode, a new for Bethesda, toggle a guide, or go back. And finally on the left we can see the name of the planet, Crete, and its listed traits, in this case being unknown, which we can likely discover by scanning other aspects of the moon. The survey bar is at 66.6%, which seems to mean that the player has discovered 66.6% of all resources and flora on this particular planet. And underneath is a breakdown of all of that, showing 5 out of 8 resources, 0 out of 0 fauna, and 0 out of 2 flora. And finally is the scan range, which can likely be upgraded, and seemingly the percent of what that plant makes up the current biome, but I could be wrong on that one. As we venture further down the rocky hill, we see our first alien life force, two non-hostile insect or crab-looking creatures scuttering down the dust slope before the shot fades to a third-person look at our character walking towards a much larger and not so unhostile creature guarding the cliffside. As our player approaches, the creature scutters awake and rises to a defensive stance. For a moment, the health bar appears showing its name to be a Crete Stalker, and after evaluating the player as not a threat, rude, it marches away to the side, with more of its kind following behind, showing us there are more variabilities and levels to the creature AI than most previous BGS games.
It would appear that pirates of the Crimson Fleet are using the facility.
The next shot shows us back in first person, coming across an iron deposit in an underpass. The scanner shows its periodic name of FE before the player brings up a laser cutter we mentioned earlier and harvests the iron. Keep in mind, although the ammo says 100, it doesn't deplete during use, so this means we either have unlimited ammo or it simply depletes very slow. Then, as we progress forward, we get a better look at the moon base we'll be infiltrating in a moment. Crete Research Lab appears on screen as we discover the location and gain XP for doing so, a feature that wasn't in Elder Scrolls games but is in Fallout games, that being given XP upon discovering new locations. Then, as the view switches to third person, we can see a nice detail in the jetpack attached to our player's back. When in scanning mode, it expands to reveal more techie details. As our player scans the ship, we can see that the ship is named the Crimson Fleet Ghost, which is a pirate faction confirmed by Vasco a moment later. We then pull out a new weapon, the Grendel, a seemingly assault or submachine gun, which if you notice displays the ammo on the mag on top of your weapon. The player jumps, showing the effect that the 0.55 gravity has on our movement, causing us to have around double the jump height and half the fall speed. Inside, we see the interior of the research facility, clearly being abandoned and taken over by the Crimson Fleet as there seems to be damaged equipment and knocked over facilities. The camera cuts again for a split second, showing that we are walking into the storage section of the lab. As we begin to hear one of the Crimson Fleet speak, we cut to further along, as we enter Lab 01 and enter sneak mode, a feature we come to expect in all BGS games at this point. And here we get our first look at combat, with a new style of enemy health display from other BGS titles, now displaying above their head along with their level and name, a feature I for one am happy to see them adopt in more recent games. Notice too the ring around the compass now turning red, indicating you are in combat, or at least a hostile zone, and displaying two red dots being the enemies that you're in combat with. Our player aims down the sights to see what I would consider an improved iron sight compared to pretty much any gun in Fallout 4, and as we kill one pirate and the other runs towards us, we can see that they have adopted the same quick loot system as Fallout 4 did, where you can hover over the actor or container without having to enter an additional menu. In this instance though, the pirate has no loot on him. We also gain 5 XP for a regular enemy kill. These pirates seem to be shooting us with some sort of bolt-action energy rifle, spewing a purple, white and green beam, and our player throws one of 11 frag grenades, looking like the same system as Fallout 4. And also displaying Bethesda's famous physics system, with the pirate's corpse being blown into the air. After missing all of our shots, we use the favourites menu to switch to the Coachman shotgun, the same favourites menu, mind you, that Fallout 4 implemented, and we blast that space pirate into an early grave. We cut forward to us looting a weapon case with a diagram on the whiteboard behind showing just what this research facility was used for. The text reading, experimental analysis of selected clone cell, with a note specifying that there was a tumour growth and a diagram of a 6-legged creature. We also get a look at our lockpicking mechanic, titled Digipicks, where you have to rotate the circle and fill in the gaps, sort of like a mix between the classic lockpicking mechanics and the Fallout terminal hacking. Also note a key feature returning from Oblivion where you can manually pick the lock or attempt an auto unlock, which seems to work differently here, as in this instance we have 0 of them, meaning it's possibly more of an advanced thing to craft or loot, sort of like a stealth boy in Fallout 4. The weapon case opens and we see the Equinox rifle, which we can also briefly see attached to our back as we leave the facility. We enter combat on the roof of the research lab. Now notice that the time of day has changed in the bottom left, showing the dark side of the moon rolling around, telling us that it's almost midday. And our player goes into combat against a new higher leveled enemy named Brogan, before fighting other pirates. We also see here that this weapon is an energy weapon, which sounds mysteriously like the Pack-a-Punch sound from Call of Duty Zombies. And just in time we see the enemy backup flying in just before we shoot a hole in the back of a poor pirate's jetpack, and they fly into the air and explode in a fiery fashion. Then in third person we jump into the air and boost with our jetpack, which is displayed in the bottom right above your health. We then fire a new weapon, the Maelstrom, and then clearly fall and miss the cliff, but with the power of editing we cut back to the top and kill our last pirate. You are then invited to the capital, New Atlantis, which is where you'll meet the last remaining group of space explorers, Constellation. A spaceship drops down into the landing zone where you can get a close-up view of New Atlantis on the planet of Jemison. While they play a dramatic and revealing soundtrack, you can clearly see that this is a highly inhabited city, with the first shot you see looking almost airport-like, with people roaming around freely living a futuristic daily life. A sign on the wall reads, "Notice to all visitors. No entry for passengers without valid visa for interplanetary passage. Prohibition on audio-visual recording without permission of UCSS." Clearly showing that space travel through the Constellation comes with strict rules and guidelines. And in fitting with the space airport theme, 3 directional signs above the head read Hotel and Shopping with Interstellar Inn, NAT, the New Atlantis Transit, and the UCSEC, the United Colonies Security and Safety. The last one telling us that Constellation is made up of a united union of interplanetary civilizations, sort of like the EU but for space. And we get a glimpse of some of them in another shot which shows 4 flags, a red one with a gear, a white and blue flag with a star, a blue flag with a frost symbol in the centre, and finally another red flag, possibly the same as the first, or this could be a similar colony. We also see armed guards and robots patrolling the city, analysing and assessing any potential threats in the area and safeguarding the civilians.
Welcome to Constellation. We have a lot to talk about. We're all here because we're committed to the biggest question of all. What's out there?
We get a glimpse of new technology for accessing restricted areas in a wristwatch seemingly named the Chronomark EST 2188, possibly hinting that the Chronomark company was established in 2188, which opens up two big star-embedded doors to a grand big room with a starlit skylight, which is strange as the light coming in from the window shows it's daytime outside. Then we get our first look at a number of things. Firstly, a close-up of the game's new facial animations, which look like a huge step up from previous titles. And also this first-person view seems to show that our NPC dialogue is in first person with a sort of Oblivion-style zoom. We then cut to some cinematics of some of the Constellation members, this shot showing a woman in some strange futuristic robes, with two paintings of generals in the background. A shot of a man in what seems to be a futuristic version of a suit, with a glass tea and biscuits room outside. Another woman now wearing a sort of bomber jacket with Constellation sigils across the arm. So far my favourite looking clothing piece, again with some sort of general behind her and a model ship below it.
These artifacts could be everything we've been looking for. As to what they are, what they're building, you'll be part of solving that puzzle now.
Next, we cut back to our centre mechanism glowing with holographic stars, as what we assume to be the shards of the artifacts the player has collected to kickstart the quest spin and float around. We then get the real look at us collecting said artifacts, which seem to give off strange gravitational effects, causing the surrounding debris to float around it. And as we reach out to touch it, we get another shot of this burst of energy, as the woman in the voiceover tells us that the artifacts are building something, but it's up to us to find out what.
So, you found something?
The new guy found it.
You dug up the artifact, right? That means you saw it. The visions?
The artifact you found appears to be one of many, scattered across the galaxy. If we can...
A scene then appears of two characters in spacesuits asking us about the visions we saw when we dug up the artifact, once again showing our first-person dialogue. We then get a few more shots of new locations, one looking like a blue-tinged city or settlement on a mountainous planet. Then we cut back to a better look at an earlier shot walking through the cargo facility, as we are told that there are many different artifacts scattered across the galaxy, and each one has their own secret to share. Interlaced throughout are various interesting shots, one of a resort named Paradiso, on a planet with purple palm trees, another showing a very cyberpunk looking settlement, with the Vol Hotel, or the Volley Hotel, and what seems to read Reliant Medical, possibly an intergalactic hospital perhaps, and then another shot of a similar looking area with a sign which seems to show some sort of Neuralink type service, with a more run down medbay area on the right.
We can unlock their secrets.
Beautiful, isn't it? The man who sold me this told me that it spoke to him.
And finally we get a look inside the earlier blue walled city, showing us a market with Shepherd's Brick Shop, possibly supplies for your ship or outpost, and a look inside a higher class looking room with golden statues resembling some mix of Greek mythology with constellation sigils on their shields. From the looks of it, this is some sort of museum perhaps. We also get a glimpse of a different spacesuit, this one with a flashlight on the helmet, probably meaning we have Fallout style toggleable lights during gameplay. We then meet our next character, possibly some sort of curator of rare artifacts from, well, his rather eccentric look and glass cases in the background. He mentions the person who sold him one of the artifacts said it spoke to him, which is likely going to be a key part in unravelling our main story.
The settled systems is full of groups with other priorities.
That's the Crimson Fleet!
Everybody get ready!
The fleet doesn't follow the rules. Agree to work for UCC staff. Together, we take down these cutthroat pirates.
We're not just here to shoot the bad guys.
We then get another look at the cyberpunk type area from before, this time better seeing that Reliant Medical Center, and also the spaceport terminal just ahead. And then a shot of a woman sat at a desk with a mug that reads Liquid Happiness, and a poster on the notice board behind her which says Rely on each other, with two astronauts holding hands. Adorable. Next we get a preview of some of the factions in the game, some good, some not so good. the Crimson Fleet, who are a group of cutthroat pirates ready to steal from anyone and kill anyone who gets in their way. We also get a more clear shot of the city we saw earlier, now revealing its name being Aquila City, a nice play on words, and established in 2167 by Salomon Coe, with a star sigil on its flag, possibly the same one we saw back at Constellation.
Peacekeepers, we protect the people of the Free Star Collective.
When you sign up with the Crimson Fleet, no one quits. The only way out is death.
The path ahead may be dangerous, but we are not stopped.
We then hear about the faction known as The Rock, who describe themselves as peacekeepers who protect the people of the 3-Star Collective. And then we learn more about the Crimson Fleet, showing it is in fact a joinable faction, stating that if you sign up with the Crimson Fleet, the only way out is death. Then showing us that one quick frame from the beginning of the showcase, this time in full, depicting a mutiny or betrayal of some sort. Then is a quick shot showing a facility in a frozen planet, but someone clean left the door open because the entire place is all frozen through, before showing us some zero-gravity gameplay in action. Then we see many different types of alien dinosaur-like creatures, the first seemingly being on the surface of the frozen planet we just saw, and a more horror-themed encounter that looks straight out of the Alien franchise.
Most Dusties don't even make it this far.
Because whatever lies at the end of this road will change humanity forever.
Then we get some shots of people mining with a similar looking tool as our cutter we used earlier on, and 2 characters who are suiting up on what seems to be an elevator. And then we can see a beautiful shot of what looks to be a crystal cave with blue protruding shards pointing inwards to the centre. Then is a quick but really interesting shot showing an old rundown NASA museum or convention, with old space tech and a banner reading History of Spaceflight, which is super interesting as it tells us that Starfield is set in our universe, or a depiction of our universe at least. Then is a beautiful colourful shot of a creature with a bird-like beak towering above our character, and a canyon with a temple with similar looking architecture to the artifacts we saw earlier. And finally some really cool shots of what seems to be the interior of said temple, with a starlit glowing constellation inside, rotating rings looking all mysterious and shit.
That gives you a look at the stories in Starfield. But ultimately, it's not our story, it's the story you create by who you are and the choices you make. And that starts with character creation. It's our most flexible yet. You can customize all the elements of how you look.
Todd now returns to introduce our next segment, character creation. And right away we get a look at the new, improved, and to their description, most flexible yet, looks menu. And notice that sliders are back, thank God. And then a quick look through some pre-made presets. Still no sign on saving your own presets without mods though. And from the get-go we see some quick details. Our character has an employee number reading 152997883-Z271. We see that we can visit a genetics facility to go back and make changes to our character later in the game, and we have tabs for biometric ID, body, face, background and traits, which we'll touch on individually in a moment. We're also wearing this Nautilus branded suit. In the body tab, we see the Fallout 4 style thin, muscular or heavy circle, and then additional sliders for body type. I'm assuming this is your sex. Then walk style, which is a really cool option for role-playing, and skin tone. In the face tab, we see a brief scroll through some but not all options. Skin tone again, head shapes, hair color, eyes.
You'll pick a background that gives you 3 starting skills.
In background, we see you can choose from a whole bunch of role-playing options. We see Beast Hunter, Bouncer, Bounty Hunter, Chef with a more detailed explanation reading, while the unrefined masses scarf down chunks by the shipload, you cater to those with a more discerning palate. In your kitchen, countless alien species became true culinary masterpieces. We also see some of your starting skills you get as a bonus to choose in this background. Gastronomy. You can craft specialty food and drinks, and research additional recipes at a research lab. Dueling, melee weapons do 10% more damage, and Wellness, immediately gain 30 points of health. Next we see Combat Medic, which reads, Leave it to human beings to fight over something as infinite as outer space. That's where you come in. You've never been afraid to take on the enemy, but you'd much rather take care of your friends. Giving you the starting skills, pistol certification, pistols do 10% more damage, medicine, medpacks heal 10% more, and weightlifting, increased total carry capacity by 10 kilograms. Then is the Cyber Runner background, which reads, from Neon to New Atlantic, the megacorps stand as monuments to power, prestige and profit. You've worked both for and against them, on the inside and out, often sacrificing conscience for credits. Which comes again with the pistol certification skill, security, you can attempt to hack advanced locks and 2 auto attempts can be banked, and persuasion, gain an increased chance of success on speech challenges. Cyberneticist reads, robots, mere toys, neuroamps, good for parlor tricks. The colony war may have made implants and upgrades available to veterans, but you once saw a greater future, humans and machines as one. This gives you the medicine skill, much like the combat medic, robotics, you deal 10% more damage to robots and turrets, and lasers, laser weapons do 10% more damage. And finally we see details on the diplomat, which reads, the wars are over, peace now reigns in the settled system, but only because there are those quietly fighting to keep it. Because of you, agreements were signed, words were heeded, lives were spared. Which comes again with the persuasion skill, diplomacy, you can force a target NPC at or below your level to stop fighting for a while, and bargaining, buy items for 5% less and sell for 10% more. And then we just get a look at the names of other backgrounds, being Explorer, Gangster, Homesteader, Industrialist, Long Hauler, Pilgrim, Professor, and Ronin. And there are most likely a few more which we can't see in this showcase.
It says here you spent some time as a diplomat. Having a way with words might prove useful.
There are optional traits, and these come with unique advantages and disadvantages.
We then see some examples of how our background can affect dialogue choices in the game, with this man talking about our background as a diplomat. And finally, in the character customization, we see our traits screen, which has some interesting qualities we're going to go over. First, let's see what we have. Alien DNA, Empath, Extrovert, which is crossed out because this trait is incompatible with the Introvert trait which we have chosen in this showcase. 3-star Collective Settler, Introvert, which reads, you really need your alone time. You have more endurance when adventuring alone, but less when adventuring with other human companions. Can't be combined with Extrovert, this being similar to the Lone Ranger skill from Fallout 4. Kid Stuff reads, your parents are alive and well, and you can visit them in their home, but 10% of all the money you earn is deducted automatically and sent to them. So some leechy parents, nice. Neon Street Rat reads, you grew up on the mean streets of Neon, likely the name of the cyberpunk looking area from earlier. You gain access to special dialogue options and better rewards from some missions on Neon. Crime bounty by other factions are greatly increased, and this can't be combined with any other faction allegiance trait. Raised Enlightened reads, you grew up as a member of the Enlightened. You gain a significant discount at the organization's store, but lose access to Sanctum Universum store. Can't be combined with any other religion trait, which tells us 2 valuable pieces of information. There are religions in the game, ones that you can be a part of, and supposedly the Enlightened and the Sanctum Universum are opposing religions in the game, which is solidified by the Raised Universal trait, reading, you grew up as a member of the Sanctum Universum. You gain a significant discount at the church store, but lose access to the Enlightened store, which also can't be combined with any other religion trait. Next we have Serpent's Embrace. You grew up worshipping the Great Serpent. Grav jumping provides a temporary boost to your health and endurance, but health and endurance are lowered if you don't continue to jump regularly, like an addiction. Another religious trait, and also hints at this faction possibly worshipping gravity itself, which is pretty cool. Spaced reads, your body has become acclimated to space. Health and endurance are increased when in space, but decreased when on the surface. Can't be combined with Terra Firma. Terra Firma not being shown in the showcase, however we can assume it's just the opposite of space, gaining more health and endurance when on a planet rather than in space. Next is a pretty cool one that I'm sure Eleonora's going to have fun with. Starter Home reads, you own a small house on a peaceful little moon, but it comes with a 50,000 credit mortgage with Gao Bank. Great, now we have to worry about bills in Starfield too. And the other traits which are not highlighted read Taskmaster, Terra Firma, United Colonies Native, and Unwanted Hero.
Not just in how you can look, but in how your character plays and develops. The skill system combines the best from our previous games, and you can unlock new skills as you level up, and then you rank those skills up by using them and completing challenges.
Next, we get a look at some different builds with some cool armors, beards, and hairdos. Then we see our skill tree menu, with tabs for physical, social, combat, science, and tech, looking like a mix between Fallout's special system and Skyrim's skill trees. Some of these perks read targeting, which greatly increases accuracy and range when shooting without aiming. And also we can see here that each skill comes with a unique challenge in order to progress in said skill. Sniper certification, which makes scoped weapons steadier and have less sway, and this one doesn't have a challenge attached, so it's possible that this means the first level in each perk we have to unlock with a perk point, and then further leveled then progressed when completing their challenges. And this seems to be the case, as when hovered over rapid reloading, we see that this character is ranked 3 out of 4, and there is indeed a challenge with this perk. Other perks shown are heavy weapon certification, demolitions, and ballistics, which we then get an expanded view of each of this skill's rank, which we then rank up to max in this showcase.
And there's deep crafting systems, from running research projects with resources you find, to crafting weapon mods needed to survive.
Now we move on to other features such as the crafting systems. We can run research projects on various game mechanics, here showing pharmacology, food and drink, outpost development, equipment, and weaponry, each showing the number of available projects underneath the titles. Then we get a huge detailed look on screen for our weapon research, showing we can craft weapon mods including barrels, grips, optics, and muzzles, each requiring different materials we can loot and harvest across different planets. We then get a look at some of these mods in this 360 spin of the Eon auto pistol we saw earlier in the showcase, and some quick gameplay showing it in use fighting some rhino-looking disease sirens on a Sahara-looking planet. Again with the Equinox shooting flying Metropus floaters, and an AR-99 on this really cool looking desert planet fighting an angular hexapod.
And you can build your own outposts. These act as a home away from home for survival and resource generation.
Next, moving on to the features which I'm most excited for, outpost building, showing us on the moon Vectera with a temperature of -199 degrees, 1% O2 and 0.91 gravity, so just like a really cold, unbreathable version of Earth. Our player places down an outpost beacon, likely a similar effect to the camp device in Fallout 76, but with a much larger radius, marking this area as our own, allowing us to build in it. We can also see some more info. First, that this moon, Vectera, is in the Narian solar system, or Narian is referring to the planet this moon is orbiting. We again have a build limit, which hopefully is more forgiving than Fallout 4's, and then we have a cargo supply number, a crew number, power, and production per minute, showing us that this is basically an extension of Fallout 4's settlement building. And thank God we have options to use an alternate camera rather than only first person view in order to build, likely making outpost building much more intuitive. Although one thing I will note here is that most of the things you can build appear to be more prefabs rather than actual individual walls, meaning less customizability. But it also kind of makes sense, as the outpost would have to be secure as to allow oxygen to pass through, so hammering down your own wooden walls and dragging power lines wouldn't really cut it. We then get a shot of this beacon, possibly to call for crew and workers to join your outpost, and a bunch of futuristic wind turbines used to generate power, as shown by our outpost power level now being 24 from previously 0.
Where and how to build each one, and you can hire characters you meet to keep it up and running. But that's not all. You can even build your own spaceships. You can choose crew members.
And then we see an example of a more complete outpost with crew and a little droid robot on wheels scooting around. And as Todd kindly adds, that's not all, as we then move on to the whole spaceship customization showcase, with a first person look at one of the interiors showing that spaceships have 3 support systems: its artificial gravity, its power level, and life. Possibly all three things you'll have to manage when taking long space adventures or getting into intergalactic ship battles. Then we get some shots showing different types of crew members we can hire, scientists and seemingly flight or engine maintenance, with a nice little message, mind you, saying I love space.
And yes, you can completely customize the look and layout. There's loads of different modules, ship manufacturers, and more. I have to say, it's so cool. We just absolutely love this.
Then is a really cool thing, the actual ship customization, showing off loads of details right off the bat. First, the power distribution across different areas of the ship, the cost it will take to make changes on the top right, also showing whatever currency we are using. To me it looks like a C, so some sort of credits, and then a load of numbers at the bottom for things I have no idea what they mean, apart from crew, shield, and top speed. I understood those. And finally we can see this blueprint has one warning, meaning there are some limitations or at least guidelines to follow to get an actual ship off the ground. We get some looks at a bunch of different modules you can attach, some requiring skills to purchase, and then we see each one of those modules can be customized in 3 different color tabs, possibly more dependent on the module. And overall the ship customization just looks really cool and is one of the features I'm most looking forward to trying out.
It's not just how the ship looks, it's how it performs, from engines to shields to weapon systems, because yes, you can fly it.
Thrusters boosted.
But now we're on to the fun stuff, space battles. Yes, flying your ship in space, shooting down other vessels and boarding them like an intergalactic space pirate. Firstly, we see a health bar for the integrity of our hull, possibly the percent of our shield, and we see our current speed in the ship and an option for a boost to get out of those tricky situations. Then we see some third-person gameplay of flying our ship, and then an enemy vessel appears out of nowhere, possibly the result of a hyperjump across long distance. Then we get our first gameplay of ship warfare as we snap around to see this beautiful ringed planet, which I'm pretty sure is Saturn, but if it isn't, it at least looks remarkably like it. Back in first person, we can see we can target lock missiles onto other ships, but they can also do the same as we have a warning saying enemy missiles locked on. And might I say, the sound design here when the ship explodes is just great. Possibly not realistic as there should be no sound in space at all, but it sounds cool and I'd rather have that than realism in this case. And then there's some shots of space exploration, an asteroid belt, an ominous ice planet maybe, and docking onto a space station orbiting a moon. Some more space battles against the Crimson Fleet, and then we get a very quick shot showing that we can board ships in the middle of space. So kill their engines, board the ship, and loot everything you can find in the spirit of a good Bethesda game.
And you may be wondering, just how big is this game? So we thought we'd take one last moment and show you. Let's take a look at one of our planets, Jemison. You can land into Atlantis, but you can also land and explore anywhere on the planet. And it's not just this planet, it's all the planets in the system. From barren but resource-heavy ice balls to Goldilocks planets with life. And not just this system, but over 100 systems. Over 1,000 planets, all open for you to explore. We can't wait to see what you find.
And then we get this epic reveal from Todd that there are over 1,000 planets to discover, also showing us a look at our world map, probably now better described as a universe map, and then a bunch of amazing cinematics to close out the showcase. But there was something sneaky in there that many people might have missed. A question I've had as well is, can you seamlessly fly from a planet into space? Well, probably not, as this shot right here is near to impossible to pull off unless there is some identical cutscene in game which plays when you launch your ship to leave a planet. So the likelihood is you get into your ship, launch into space, there is a loading screen, fly around the solar system, and then when you jump to another solar system, there's an additional loading screen between them too, which is pretty expected given the creation engine. And also as a tiny little Easter egg, this shot here seems to be showing an abandoned rover that looks suspiciously like Curiosity on a planet that looks suspiciously like Mars. Coincidence? I think not. And finally, my earlier suspicions come true as we see this energy burst once again as we hyperjump in our ship before cutting to black. And that's everything in this showcase. If there are any details I missed, feel free to let me know in the comments below. I for one am super excited to play Starfield, so subscribe and we can be excited together. Other than that, thanks for watching this very different type of video, and I'll see you next time. Take care everyone.